Greetings, everyone! And yes, I am back with a video finally. I know most of you have been waiting. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, guys. All that soda. Need to cut back on my soda drinkage. Anyway, yes, the list is finally here. I finally got 5 villains and 5 heroes from the X-Men universe. I know a lot of you guys don't like my top 10 list thus far, even though I've only done 2. I know a lot of people really didn't like my Batman and Superman villain videos. But at the same time, these are my characters, stereotypical choices or not. It's like, come on, guys. Be nice. Anyway, let's get into the countdown, shall we? Start with the villains first. I think I'll kick it off with number 10, which is one of my favorite, Marvel villains, but also one of my favorite X-Men villains, which is Cain Marko, also known as the Juggernaut. And I love Juggernaut as a character. I think Cain Marko is probably, to me, one of the many great examples of a bad guy who really doesn't deserve his power, but being the conniving person that he is, he actually managed to find a way to gain ultimate power, like that kind of archetype. And the fact that he's the stepbrother of Xavier, I think, makes him a much more personal enemy of the X-Men, because he has this vendetta against Charles, because he was always the favorite. When Marko's dad had married Xavier's mother for her money and such. So there's always been that deep animosity in Marko towards Xavier. And when he became the Juggernaut, he had a way of getting revenge. But over time, Juggernaut's tried to be a hero, nearly lost his powers, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm not going to go into because there is a point, and I even asked F.W. Waller this, but at one point, maybe not this switch-up, but maybe in a future switch-up, I want to go into this guy's origins and talk to you guys about him. Because I feel that Marko is one of those characters that he has such a rich, deep history as a villain. I think you guys might enjoy it. I certainly did a little bit of research. I think that he's a pretty good villain. And on top of that, he's probably one of the X-Men. He's probably one of Marvel's most popular villains because he's not just faced the X-Men, but he's faced Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Thor, the Hulk. That's the thing about Marko that I love, is that he's the kind of villain that while he did start out an X-Men villain, he later moved on to some of the other big fish in the Marvel Universe. But anyway, enough rambling about Juggernaut. We move on to number 9 here, which is the Sentinels. And I could go into a whole spiel about that, but anybody who reads the X-Men knows the Sentinels and probably knows my reaction. It is the same as everybody else. The Sentinels are just awesome. The X-Men are fighting 30 to 40 foot tall giant mutant killer robots. What's not awesome about that? And it's kind of a travesty that in the Bryan Singer movies we didn't get to see them face it, although in X-Men Origins Wolverine you actually got to fight a Sentinel with Logan, which that to me was a little bit redeemable. But I'm hoping in these First Class movies, and I'm really hoping in the second one that they're doing, which is Days of Future Past, I got my fingers crossed that we'll see Bolivar Trask and maybe see the beginnings of Master Mold and the Sentinels, prototypes being sent out. Because that's the one thing that not just me, but other, X-Men fans like yourselves watching this video have been waiting for. So I'm with you guys. I'm hoping with this Days of Future Past, this sequel to First Class, that we see the Sentinels. I really want to see the Sentinels in a movie at some point because they are very awesome and badass, villains for the X-Men to face. Next up is probably one of the more unique, I feel, that they're generally a galactic threat to the Marvel Universe, but at the same time the X-Men have faced them more than anyone. And that is the Brood. They are number 8. The Brood, to me, the Brood are kind of freaky, because not only do they look like the Xenomorphs from the Alien movies, but if anybody who's watched F.W. Waller's Supervillains Explored on the on these characters, they're pretty freaky. They plant eggs in a host's body, and when the egg hatches, the person mutates into a brood. Yeah, that's not creepy. But yeah. But then again, while I do like the brood and while I like the concept behind them and while they are freaky villains, I kind of doubt that we will ever see them appear until, like, say, years after most of us are already dead. But never say never. We might see the Brood in a future X-Men movie, we might not. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm also not going to completely lose optimism. I think it'd be great to find out if the Brood had been, like, laying for thousands of years in an X-Men movie or something. Like, you know what I mean by that? Anyway, move on to another character who's actually fairly new, but a character that I'm greatly intrigued by, which is Bastion. And this is a character I would really love to see translate to an X-Men movie. And this is actually a character that's on my list of supervillains that I would love to do for the switch up and for my version of Supervillains Explored, at least on the Marvel side. Bastion is basically a highly super advanced, super futuristic Sentinel. He is basically an amalgam of Master Mold and the character Nimrod. That should tell you any and everything for those of you who are X-Men fans. And also, this guy has the ability, kind of like Brother Eye in the Omax saga before they rebooted DC, to turn people into I believe Omega Sentinels or so, or Super Sentinels. I think it was Alpha Sentinels. I don't know. He basically can turn people into Sentinels, communicate with all forms of electricity. He can almost do like a mechanical Geist type deal. He has way too many abilities for me to really list, and plus, I kind of want to save all the cool stuff for if I ever do a Supervillains Explored on him. Or at least number one on the villain side, or rather, number 6, or number 5, depending on how you look at it, is, of course, Apocalypse. I wanted to say his real name, but I don't want to mess up his real name just to offend people. And I love Apocalypse. I don't think that you can get any more deadly or more reckless foe than Apocalypse. Apocalypse is basically, if you took Darth Vader and it's like if you took Darth Vader, Satan, and every evil character that you could possibly think of in literature, and so on and so forth, and put them all in a blender. That's what Apocalypse is. This is a guy who even if you are, strong enough to survive, he will enslave you, or he will break your spirit, break your bones. He will physically, mentally, and emotionally break you, period. He's not a nice guy. And we have yet to see him in an X-Men movie or hear him mentioned. So, damn it, they need to put Apocalypse in a movie at some point. But now we move on to the heroes, and we move on to one of my favorites, which is Sunfire. And this is a character that I would really love to actually do for a lesser known but awesome heroes segment on. Because Sunfire to me is great, because not only does he represent Japan on the X-Men roster, but he also is not a natural mutant. Little fun fact that I can give out, although as I said, I'll save the rest for like a lesser known deal, possibly an X-Men marathon if you guys, are polite enough. Not saying that I will, but I'm saying I might. Anyway, no, he's not a natural mutant in the fact that, he was actually bombarded with radiation while he was still a fetus in his mother's stomach. So he didn't have the X gene. He was actually a natural mutant. Something to think about there. Of course, gotta go with number 4. The Ragin' Cajun himself, yes, Gambit. I like Gambit. Gambit was a character that I saw on the 90s animated cartoon and that I actually liked. I mean, yeah, the guy's a thief. The thing about him is that he's a thief, he's a charmer, he's an excellent, staff fighter. And plus his mutant ability to me is cool. He can kinetically charge anything and throw it and it explodes on impact. That in itself to me was just awesome. And then I recently found out that he actually has enhanced near superhuman, agility and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that really ups, my liking of this character even more. And it's always kind of good when you see characters like Gambit that are pickpockets that actually try to do good. Keyword is try. He still falls into his ways every once in a while, but I also love the relationship that he has with Rogue. I think he and Rogue, to me, were a great couple, but that's just my inner fangirl screaming in my manly body. But anyway, we move on to Forge, a character that I feel is personally overlooked and highly underrated. Forge to me is great as a character, and one thing that I don't like is that they now try to classify him as a mutant. Originally, he was not a mutant. He was just a guy with Native American origins who joined the X-Men out of pity because he had created a weapon that could possibly dampen mutant powers. And this caused Storm to lose her ability to fly, and she nearly died. And so Forge joined the X-Men from that incident and wanted to work towards a peace between humans and mutants. And the thing that I like about him is that anything his mind conceives, he can make. And he understands machinery. And I think that's why they made him a mutant now, because that seemed kind of odd for a human character to kind of, understand machines and all that. Nevertheless, regardless if he's a mutant or not, Forge to me I think is a very undervalued member of the X-Men team. Because this is a guy that can not only handle himself, but a guy who also is very, very inventive. I mean, he's practically the X-Men's MacGyver. But moving on to number 2 here is one of my favorites. And it's always been one of my childhood favorites, which is Peter Rasputin, also known as Colossus, the gentle giant of the X-Men. And I like Peter. I like his origins. I feel that he's a character that has grown quite a bit. His relationship with Kitty Pryde, his relationship with the X-Men, his relationship in wanting to protect his family and try to fight for human-mutant peace. And despite his stature, Colossus is one of those characters that he's got a heart of gold. And that's always the thing that I love about Colossus, is that he'd rather be a pacifist than actually be an aggressor. So that in itself makes me respect Colossus a whole lot. But a character that I respect even more, a character that I actually can sympathize and relate with, is the number 1 character of this list, which is Hank McCoy, also known as Beast. I sympathize very much with Hank in the fact that, I don't in a cocky way think of myself as hyper intelligent or all that. The thing with Hank that I like is that he's an intelligent guy who speaks very well. Yet, because of his appearance, people judge him, and they're scared of him, and I'd like to think in a way that I somewhat relate to that in the fact that I do speak somewhat well, I am intelligent, I've learned to actually accept that about myself and feel comfortable with it. And that's one thing, and a lot of that did actually come from Beast. Because, Beast taught me, especially from the 90s animated series, when he could have broken out of jail at any point, he stayed there because in his mind, he was almost like a Martin Luther King or Gandhi-esque type character. He's the kind of character that he prefers peace, but he's not afraid to throw down if he needs to. So, I very much sympathize and relate with his character very much. But anyway, guys, that is the list. I thought that I'd do it real quick. Sorry that's not all flushed out. But I have another video that I'm going to post here, so I will see you guys later, and hopefully you did enjoy my ramblings.